The first iteration of what we have today, it took about 6 months, a lot of coffee and a lot of long hours. And I used some source code that I had found on GitHub. And then I designed my own to integrate all of them and get them to play nice between them. Once I had that, it was something that was, very basic, no UI. It was input here, output there, and see what happens. Turned out surprisingly well for the pretty crappy quality of the 3D printer. My name is Bruno Demuro, and I am the founder and CEO of Armor Bionics.
This is Code Story, the podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Lappart, and today how Bruno Demuro created an online platform to print highly accurate 3D models of MRI scans. All this and more on Code Story. Bruno Demuro is first and foremost a father of 2 children. He says this is the single most awesome thing, and yet at the same time, the most challenging thing. He has a background in industrial engineering and design, but considers himself a generalist and a relentless problem solver, which he admits can be hard on his wife. He loves all things tech, hardware, software, you name it. But beyond tech, he loves working on and restoring classic cars and European cars, along with surfing on a longboard. Earlier in Bruno's life, his mother had to undergo surgery to have a brain tumor removed. Though the surgery went well, in order to remove a tumor the size of a penny, the doctor had to make an opening the size of a grapefruit. When Bruno asked why, the doctor said that it was the only way they could be sure that the tumor would be accessible. Bruno found this answer to be unacceptable. This is the creation story of Armor Bionics.
What we do at Armor Bionics is we take 2D, CT, and MRI scan data, so the images as they come from the CT scanner and the MRI scanner, and we transform those 2D images into 3D patient-specific 3D models that exactly replicate the patient's anatomy. So this way, doctors, instead of using those, black and white or gray and grayscale images, 2D images, to try to understand what's going on inside the patient's body, we give them full color 3D models that exactly replicate what's going on inside the patient's body. So that is everything that we do. We work with surgeons. We're trying to help them to better understand what happens when you're planning for a surgery and you want to see what is that, for example, if you're working with a patient that has a tumor, you want to see how that tumor interacts with all the surrounding structures or organs. You can do that using a 3D model instead of using those images. So you have something that is an asset that's more the word is more intuitive to use, and that allows you to have a clearer picture of how everything is set up before going into the OR. It all started because of a problem with my mom. So it was something that me and my family went through. My mom, as many women out there, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And given that diagnosis, it was the best case scenario that what one could hope for. So it was this very tiny tumor that was self-contained with clear margins. So the doctors went ahead and removed that tumor, and on her 5-year checkup, that's when you're going to go and the doctor's going to say, hey, you cleared the disease, you're officially cured. In the last checkup, they found this tiny tumor in her meninges, and the meninges are the tissue that covers the brain. So the tumor was the size of a penny, pretty much close to the temporal lobe. And in order to remove that tiny tumor, the doctors opened a hole in her skull the size of a grapefruit. So after the surgery, I went to the doctor and I said, hey, why did the opening have to be that big? I mean, the surgery went perfectly. That is something that I have to always clarify, because sometimes I forget, and my mom always says, you have killed me so many times when you're telling the story, because I forget to mention that she's doing great, and the surgery went right. But the surgeon after the surgery told me is because that's the only way that we are certain that when we remove that bone flap, or that that tiny cover or that big cover in this case, to extract the tumor, that the tumor is going to be laying below it. So, given that my formation was in industrial engineering, industrial design, I pretty much had a clear understanding of how the CT scanner works and MRI scanner works. So that answer to me was completely unacceptable. I mean, there had to be a way for a doctor before surgery to pinpoint the exact location in space of where that tumor lies, so that when he went into the surgery, he could just go in exactly to that region, instead of doing this whole exploratory surgery. So that was pretty much what kicked off everything. I mean, I started going on this deep dive rabbit hole into how 2D imaging scanning works in the medical field, how they are processed, what you get from them, and starting to explore if there were any tools out there that could give you this, the idea of taking this 2D image slices, because that's what the CT scanner and MRI scanner does. They pretty much slice you, and you see the different slices of your body, and try to get those slices back together and reconstruct the patient's anatomy, or in this case, my mom's anatomy. So at that point, I started, experimenting with, open source, some open source software that I had found that it wasn't like really put together and actually functional, and some scripts that I would find in lying somewhere around in GitHub, writing my own, and try this mix and match, try to puzzle something that would actually get it to do what I wanted to. That was to get those 2D images into 3D. And after pretty much 6 months of a lot of coffee and very, very long hours, I had something that did exactly that.
Well, let's dive into the MVP. So tell me about that first product you built, and how long it took you to build, what sort of tools you used to bring it to life, and things like that.
The first iteration of what we have today, it took about 6 months of, as I told you, a lot of coffee and a lot of long hours. And it was composed of a bunch of different, I used some source code that I had found on GitHub, some open sources some code that was open source from another different kind of tools that were for other kind of applications. And then I designed my own to integrate all of them and get them to play nice between them. And once I had that, it was something that was, very basic, no UI. It was very, input here, output there, and see what happens. And just, you pretty much, once you press go, you hope that everything goes according to plan. And for the 3D printing, I mean, we're talking this took place it's been, close to 11 years ago. So for 3D printing, we were using this. A friend of mine had somehow sourced schematic for this, very brute, pretty crappy 3D printer that you could, do it yourself and assemble it. So we used that to do the first print, which turned out surprisingly well for the pretty crappy quality of the 3D printer. And that was pretty much it. We had this, very basic code and this very, very, very basic 3D printer to do the first tests.
It's interesting. I think that's a perfect segue into my next question. So, with the crappy 3D printer and the, kind of rough start there, you obviously had to make some decisions and trade-offs in that MVP about, what you were going to choose when, what sort of features you were going to start with, or even technical debt you're going to accept. So tell me about some of those decisions you had to make and how you coped with them.
At the beginning it was, just trying to get something out of it. So anything that it would output and see if it was barely acceptable, that was something that at first was like, okay, this, once you have proof of concept, you can go ahead and then start tweaking and perfecting it. So at the beginning it was just getting a result. After I achieved that, the next step was, okay, how good can this get using this pretty crappy infrastructure? So how can I get the most out of this setup? So be it the code, be it the 3D printer, let's start working on that to perfect it and get the absolute best that we can get from this. And that's when it became evident that the main our guiding star during this whole process, and I believe that to this date is what defines our company, is that the end result, the quality had to be prime. I mean, everything has to be the best quality. We want to be the best out there doing what we do. So once I started with that setup, I mean, it just all started evolving from that. So, from trying to get a result as fast as possible to then trying to refine it and iterate and try to get the best model or the best 3D printed model possible, given that those constraints. It was something that, every iteration you start, doing those trade-offs. So you start trading off the rendering time for the quality of the end digital model, and then you start working with, okay, so I'm going to do the 3D printing. If we downsize the layer height, we have very better 3D printing resolution. We can do that, but then the 3D print, instead of taking, like it did in those days, 24 hours, it's going to take out 48 hours. So we start surrendering time in exchange for better quality was something that was very common back then. The reality is that today, with the upgrade in processing power, the overall improvement of pretty much every single piece of hardware and software that we're using, is that it's kind of become something that's superfluous right now. I mean, it doesn't matter. What we know is that it pretty much in those times, the guidelines that we follow to this day were drawn up, and I think that is something that's pretty cool to have endured all this time.
So then you've got your MVP, you progress, or you've got your MVP, you got it working. How did you take Armor Bionics and progress the product from there? How did you mature it? And what I'm interested in is how you built your roadmap and how you decided, okay, this is the next most important thing to address or to build.
That is something that was very hard to do, and it wasn't an easy 1-2 step process. What happened was that once we had the MVP working, the biggest thing, and I think that it's critical to all startups, is I started, interacting and really trying to understand the process from the medical side. So I would get together with the surgeons, and they would go over, each step of the how the patient would go into the hospital, and how the process of the whole surgical planning would unfold, to then how the surgery would unfold, to then how the patient would evolve inside the hospital. So trying to get a clear understanding of the ecosystem that I was trying to enter. So at that point, I mean, I started working together with Paulo, my co-founder, that he's mainly focused on the commercial side. So when we started working on designing the product, at that point what happened was that, okay, we have this working, we know how it works, but how do we integrate this into the healthcare system in a way that actually works, given that the healthcare system has all this regulations and processes and things that you have to deal with in order to operate inside that. So trying to get the information firsthand from the end customer, that would be the surgeon or the patient, was critical to us. And setting the roadmap was okay, so we have the product, and we know that we can get something that is of good quality and in the right amount of time. We have covered all the technical side, but we have to see how we integrate that to the system, to something that has already been set up. And as one of the doctors said, he told us, "I've been operating this way for the past 20 years. Why are you trying to change it?" I was trying to tell him, "Hey, if you do this, you're gonna have all this, improvements in pretty much every single marker that you can imagine during the surgery. So why not try it?" But we had to find a way that was, that made this easy to use for them, and it would not take any time from their, day-to-day workings, and would not take time. And this was something that was critical to us, that it would not take time from the doctor, from the patient. So this means that every interaction that we would have with the doctor would be the minimum as necessary. So we didn't want to take time from them. So that's when we started designing our platform. So what our platform does is it pretty much acts as the connector or the gateway from which the 2D images from the CT scanner are converted into the 3D model, and then can be directly 3D printed from the platform. So this way, what happens is the doctor or the imaging specialist would upload the images to our platform, and then the doctor would request straight up there what it is that he needs to be converted into 3D. Like, for example, the images go in, they upload it, it's just drag and drop, and then he will tell us, "Hey, I want all the bones of the left hand to be converted to 3D." So we then would get that work order, the images and the description of what was needed. We would process all the images and output the 3D model. Once the 3D model is approved by the doctor, it would then, it could be 3D printed, or just, the digital 3D model would do. So having that process set up in a way that it's like literally 3 clicks from the doctor's side. So from the doctor's side, he would upload the images, tell us what he needed, and click next, and that's it. The order would come in and we would take care of the rest. So that was something that was at the beginning really not, it was not obvious. So when we first started, we would try and, have long conversations with the doctor to understand what it was that he needed. And then we started seeing that, no, that's not the way to go, because the doctor has to be, attending to patients, and he shouldn't be wasting time with us. We should just be another tool in his toolbox that he can, take out when he needs us, and not be there bothering them when he doesn't. So yeah, that is something that, having all this set up in a way that we always wanted to make this as a service. We have never been comfortable with the idea of a hospital owning 3D printers, and owning specialized hardware and specialized software to do all this processing, because the way we see it is it shouldn't be done by the hospital. It should be done by someone that doesn't have to be that won't take time from them or resources, so that they can actually contract us as a service, and then they use us when they need us, and if they don't need us, we are there for when they do.
Let's switch to team. So how did you go about building your team, and what did you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you?
Here in Uruguay, we have very good schools. So that is something that is a great advantage. So we have great, everything relating to software. We have great programmers, software engineers. We have everything you may need from that point. And we also have great designers and great industrial engineers and great industrial designers. And one of the things that we found pretty much at the beginning is that it's way easier to teach an industrial designer anatomy than it is a doctor to teach him to do all the segmentation or processing of the images. So yeah, we started training people from that area or that vertical, and that ended up becoming its very own other career where you can now be a bioengineer here in Uruguay. That is something that when we started wasn't available. So we now have bioengineers, and when we started, we have a flexible team. So what happens is that when COVID hit, one of the unexpected results from that was that surgeries halted in pretty much everywhere. So in Latin America, given that the focus was on treating the COVID patients, hospitals would just stop performing surgeries. So planned surgeries were just stopped everywhere. So what happened was that from our side, having the flexible team was something that was crucial to surviving the pandemic. So this means that on high demand, when we're under stress, we get requests from all over the world. Our team can grow elastically to accommodate to that demand. And when things like the pandemic happens, is we can shorten and go into survival mode, as you would say. But when choosing those people, we always try to find people that would. First of all, you have to be very, very flexible on what you're interested in, because you're going to see cases that have nothing to do one to the other, and you're going to have to learn as you go. I mean, it's something that is very complex. And when working with the rest of the company, I mean, you got the legal department, the accounting, and all the, as they say, the boring structure, because every company has to have that. We always try to get the best people available for the position. So yeah, but I would say the design team is our most valuable asset, and getting to have the liberty to see all these different cases, and we work on is something that's it's very, very interesting. There's never a boring day. So one day you're working on a case of a 6-month-old baby boy with this huge tumor in his abdomen. The other one, you're working with a cardio patient, and then you have a neurological one. So it's very interesting.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted vCISOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. This will be an interesting topic given kind of the area of the problems you're solving, but I'm going to ask it as generally as possible and get your response. So Did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or are you fighting this as you grow?
That is something that when we first started was our main concern. And we tried to make everything, we tried to design everything so that it would scale up as we go. Because, as I said, the thing of being in Uruguay gives us great advantages, and what happens, everything relating to, we have great infrastructure here, great internet connectivity. So this means that we can have our team working remotely on this, on our day-to-day basis, and we can expand it on demand pretty much instantly. So we have a set of designers on call that should the demand be there, we can call up and say, hey, come on up, we have work to do. So yeah, that is something that from the start we designed everything to go into that direction. Now, one important thing to say is that in the end, we're always looking for automation. So we have been working from day one in automating every single thing that we can in order to eventually have, AI segmentation, stop depending on that flexible workforce to have it all streamlined and as quick as possible.
As you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
The relationship with the patients and the patient's family. So something that we almost never talk about is that what happens when you're working with surgeons is that although they are our point of contact, and it happens a lot that a patient would come up to us and tell us, hey, my daughter is going in for surgery, can you be of assistance to my surgeon? So it's the patients that come and reach out to us so that we can work with their surgeons in that surgery. And of course, me having a family and little kids, it's impossible not to empathize with those parents, and you end up having this awesome network of families that you've worked on cases. I mean, this year alone we have worked on, it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, almost five surgeries of babies with congenital heart disease. So these are congenital malformations on their hearts, and they were operated in Argentina. So if we can extrapolate that for a second, so these are 3D models that were created in Uruguay, 3D printed in New York, and operated on in Argentina. And we've had 100% success rate, so they are all doing great, luckily. And we have, this direct relationship with the patient, with the baby's families. So they would, update us when, hey, it's her first year birthday. So thank you for everything that you have done. That is what, at the end of the day, is a single reason I will get up every single day and do this forever if I could, because do this tiny, contribution to this result is something that it's really fulfilling.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
For a moment there, we were so caught up, in the designing of the product that we made the most talked about big no you can, that is focus on the product and take your eye off of the client or your customer. And when you start focusing on the product and you don't see where your customer is going, what is going to happen is that when that product ends up being released, you're going to be way off target. So luckily we cut it in time, but yeah, there were a couple of months there that when the moment came, it was, why were we doing this? And that is something that you don't want to see happen in any process. But yeah, luckily we caught it in time to correct course correct and had it done. But yeah, that is something that can happen when you start falling in love with your product and you're falling in love with what you're doing, and you see everything looks great from your side, And when you're going to work on deploying, you see, hey, this makes zero sense. Well, that is a big problem that you have to avoid.
Well, what does the future look like for your product and for your team?
This year alone, we have had some pretty significant milestones. So back in May, we signed a partnership with the company Shapeways. So Shapeways is the biggest 3D printing service provider in the world, which pretty much allows us to have our 3D models delivered anywhere in the world with the best possible quality available and in pretty much any technology. So we have no restrictions in materials, colors, you name it, we can print it. And from that point of view, that means that, going really global and, specializing in what it is that we are good at. So that would be the designing and the 3D modeling of the anatomy, means that we can, go ahead and hand off all the production side. That it was something that in the beginning we did ourselves to a company like Shapeways that are specialized in that. So moving forward, what we're looking for is, growing our business globally, helping in more surgeries everywhere around the world to this day. I mean, we have processed, I think it's something like 3 million images and assisted in over 250 surgeries. Now, the cool thing is that those 250 surgeries took place in more than 25 countries around the world. So that's something that being from Uruguay is pretty mind-boggling when you think of this tiny country in South America. But we have seen, pretty awesome things like, helping surgeons in Peru to separate a set of conjoined twins. That that's with everything that entails to, as I told you, working day-to-day cases with babies and complex surgery. So, yeah, moving forward, I think the objective is to, expand.
Let's switch to you, Bruno. Who influences the way that you work? I'm a CEO, CTO, architect, really any person that you look up to, and why?
I get my work ethic from primarily from my dad. So I grew up in a home where my dad would, come up, work long hours, just do anything that was needed in order to take care of the family. So that is the main driver. But if you say, okay, if you want to talk famous people or people around there, I find it very hard not to. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but Elon Musk, with all the good things and bad things that he has, I mean, I really you can't go ahead and build what he's built if you don't have, this idealist mindset. So I see some things there. I mean, especially when you're working with patients and you can see the direct result that your technology has had in their lives. I mean, that is something that I try my best to try and I cherish and try grow it and maximize it. So in the end, all I want to do is make surgeries safer for everyone, everywhere. And I think that what Musk is doing with airspace and doing with Tesla, I mean, I've taken a couple of plays from his book there.
Well, we talked about a mistake, but it's a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently? Or where would you consider taking a different approach?
Funding. So for a very long time, we pretty much bootstrapped our way into the industry. So we did everything that we could with this minimum, effort, being it monetary or whatever. We became very expert and experienced and very good at taking $3 and making them go a very long way. And although that is something that it's good at the beginning when you're working with healthcare, it's not the best way to go along and doing that, because you're gonna need, eventually funding for regulations to get certifications to start, even in commercial, you're gonna need marketing, you're gonna need all those things that at the beginning are not, are not clear or not, obvious. So yeah, that is something that and I've also seen it happen to other startups in here, that they start up strong and they start working there and they don't gather up funding fast enough to try to grow that business in the way that's optimum. And at the beginning we did exactly that. So yeah, gladly we then started working with the government here, which gave us they gave us a grant so that we could start growing our company. But at the beginning it was something that it's not obvious, and you think, hey, I can do with this and I can manage, and we'll fix it when we get to that point. But sometimes it's better to just have the funding when you start and do it right from the start, because then you're gonna have all this vices and things that you had to do in order to try and get things to work, that when you start scaling up and becoming a real company, they just don't fly.
Right. That's a hard balance to strike, right? Of having enough resources to do the things that you want to do, but also, scaling back the resources to be able to be scrappy enough and keep enough of your ownership throughout it. So that's a tough balance to strike for sure. Well, last question, Bruno. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
The advice I would give them is, first of all, is be very, very careful who you choose to work with and who you partner up with in order to try and achieve your goals or your purpose. Especially, when you're working with if you're starting out small and you're trying to find potential partnerships with other companies, the problem with starting up small and you trying to find a partnership with somebody that's this multinational company or somebody that's big, is that you will understate the amount of work it will take you to just keep up with everything relating to that partnership. So be very careful of who you partner up with, who you start working with, and also keep your ears open, because there's a lot of people out there that know a lot, and they will try and help you with your product, solution, or whatever. But it will sometimes happen that person that's talking to you has something that, like happened to us, won't have experience of your exact same field or in your field. And one of the things that was very frustrating to us is that working in healthcare, things move way differently than in the tech world. So where tech companies would start managing their KPIs and doing all these campaigns and working that way. We went through 2 500 startups programs, and one of the takeaways that we had was pretty much 98% of everything that was taught there had no application whatsoever to our industry. So that's the other good thing that you have to take into account, is that be very selective of your time, because the time that you're going to dedicate in those kind of programs, if you see that they are not addressing your company straight away, it will probably end up stealing all this time from you. And when you're beginning a company or starting up a company, one of the biggest assets that you have, since you don't have a lot of capital when you start with, is time. So that is the most valuable asset when you're first starting up. So be very wary of how you allocate that time. And the last one I think is try things. Try things. There are sometimes that you try things and things happen where you didn't expect that result, and in the end it can be one of the differentiating pillars that make your product unique. So yeah, that I think that those are some good advices from personal experience.
Absolutely. Well, Bruno, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Armor Bionic.
Oh, thank you, Noah, and for the invite.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.